It's
and
Oddworld.
Hey oddballs, I'm your host Jensen, and welcome to episode 59. Every episode that has a 9 in it, I just want to say, and feeling fine. It's pretty lame, but that's just who I am as a person. But you should be feeling fine, because for those people who are born today, happy birthday, you August 16th babies. You know what that means? We're going to be learning about you. So here we go.
Happy birthday.
No shrinking violets. August 16 people are driven by the compulsion to turn the spotlight upon themselves. It is sometimes difficult to tell what motivates these dynamic characters more: the urge to share their message, or the means by which they draw others' attention to themselves. Certainly, the majority of those born on this day are extroverts who bask in acclaim and are content even with a hostile reception, their main priority being to attract notice. Yet behind their often brash and confrontational facades lies a more serious self, an essential core that is often completely contrary to the personal image that they choose to project. In theatrical terms, it is if these people are simultaneously actor and director, the former interpreting the commands of the latter and presenting them in the most attention-grabbing manner, while the following an ambitious game plan with remarkable focus and tenacity. Indeed, some August 16 people will find professional success as performers or producers. Although they are well equipped for any field, politics or teaching, for example, in which they can inspire and direct others. The more profound ambitions of many of those born on this day are geared toward the attainment of happiness rather than material riches. They typically guard their private lives jealously. This is the one arena in which they feel they can take off their masks and be themselves. Similarly, they value those who love them for what they actually are, rather than what they seem to be, and in turn offer their nearest and dearest their fierce affection, protection, and loyalty. In the interests of maintaining their emotional equilibrium, they should ensure that they take the time to relax, to enjoy the simple pleasures of life, and remain grounded in reality. Their virtues are exuberant, extroverted, level-headed. Their vices are confrontational, manipulative, and disconnected. So again, happy birthday, August 16th, people. And we're going to move on to stories.
This comes from parking-show-8153 on Reddit.
My parents' house is haunted, and they refuse to believe it, even though the ghost is affecting all of us. My parents' homes have always been haunted, and I have always been sensitive to ghosts for as long as I can remember. I will probably be referencing multiple houses, so I'm going to name the current house they live in the Shelby House. When I was younger, we lived in the same neighborhood they live in now. We moved out of our first house and moved to a couple of different houses, and now my parents are living in the same original neighborhood I grew up in. It's a few houses down from our first house. The Shelby house has had a few different owners, and being in a small town, we knew most of the owners. Well, the previous owners, we'll name them Thomas and Grace, were a couple with an empty nest. I'm not sure how long they owned the house before us, but they were the couple that my parents bought the house from. Here's some backstory. They aren't there now, The mailbox and the curb across from it had rose bushes at the end of the driveway. They have been there for a while. As I said, we knew some of the previous owners of this house, and the rose bushes have been there since I was a kid. I remember seeing them when we would go visit. The driveway is horrendous, and it is so hard to get out of. That's very important in the story. Now back to the story. When my parents bought the house, Grace said, "Be careful of the rose bushes. They're cursed. The roses caused Thomas to die." She made some joke like, "Just make sure you don't run over the roses," and laughed. My parents are super religious, so they didn't believe her, and they don't believe in ghosts or curses. When Thomas and Grace were living there, anytime one of their friends, family, really anybody, would run over the rose bushes, they would have the worst luck for like an entire week. And people would tell Thomas and Grace about it. Now, this is where the story takes a turn. Thomas ran over the rose bush one day, and a week later, he sadly had a heart attack and died inside the house. That's what led Grace to sell the house to my parents. It is important to note that Thomas was 6 foot. Now, on to how the roses take effect on my family. We hadn't even lived in this house for a month, and my father accidentally ran over the rose bushes one day. That week, he got a rare type of food poisoning, went septic in the middle of the night, and had to be rushed to the hospital. He passed out at home while in the kitchen and fell and broke his ribs because he hit the floor so hard. The doctor said it was a miracle he survived. He was in the hospital for at least 2 months or more and also had to have some type of surgery. Then, my mother ran into the rose bushes on her way to work. She had someone rear-end her. Everyone was fine in the crash, but still, like, what the fuck? So, after those two things happened, my parents decided to take the rose bushes on both sides up and just replant different flowers. My parents were too busy to do it, so they told my brother-in-law and sister to do it. My brother-in-law's mother helped them. They all had bad luck and had catastrophic things happen to them for almost a month. I can't remember what they were because it was one thing after another, almost every single day. They replanted different flowers, and the new flowers died almost immediately. No matter how many flowers my family planted, they would all die. I have no idea if any of the other previous owners had had stuff happen to them because of the rose bushes. Now, I lived in that house for about a year or so before I moved out. I would always hear footsteps and voices when no one was home. I always had nightmares of me being haunted and possessed, and bad things happening to my family. I would constantly have sleep paralysis. It was to the point I wouldn't sleep because I was so scared to have nightmares, or I would sleep in my car or when I would come home from school around lunch. One day, I was home alone and eating lunch in the living room while on the phone with my boyfriend at the time, Owen. From the couch, you can see into my room and the hallway. I was on FaceTime with Owen and watching GMM like every day when I got home from school. I remember I was eating ramen and all of a sudden, I see this 6-foot dark figure walk into my room from the hallway. and I heard someone go into my room. I saw my door open, and I said, "Owen, I think someone is in my house." And he said, "Okay, go get the pew pew and stay on the phone. If something happens, I will call the cops." I grabbed a knife from the kitchen and I walked into my room to check it out. And then my brother's room and the bathroom. And no one was there. A couple of days went by and the same thing happened. It kept happening, so I told my brother about it. And he said he experienced the same thing. The day I moved out of the house, all of the nightmares stopped. My brother tells me he has them now, and most nights he won't sleep in the house. He'll go to my sister's and sleep. Every time I go to my parents' house now, I go home with a giant migraine, and I just feel like my entire energy was drained out of me. Freaking haunted rose bushes. I'm sorry? Haunted rose bushes? No. Haunted homes? Sure, but cursed rose bushes? Not even just haunted rose bushes, freaking cursed rose bushes. And the fact that anybody decided to take them out? No. That's even worse. It just is all a bad idea. But more importantly, like, why the rose bushes specifically? I would want to know why. I want to know. I want to know why. I'm really going out on a limb here, but like, what if someone cursed those bushes, like they were like jealous or something, and they were like maybe like a witch. And I'm not saying like witches are bad. No. I'm just saying, like, what if somebody cursed the place and grew rose bushes and they were cursed? Like, they were cursed because they were like jealous or mad, or something bad happened at that house and they were like, screw this place, like, it's cursed. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure it out because I've never heard of cursed rose bushes, and the fact that someone has basically died because of them, that's really terrifying. So if this has happened to you, let me know, and we're going to move on to the next story.
This comes from SenzuPeeen on Reddit.
I got my ass whooped by a ghost. To preface, I was training kind of hard, going into powerlifting at that time. My wife worked nights, so I was home with my kids. I laid them down to go to bed. I heard someone knock on my door. Not unusual, since I know many tenants on my property, and the closest one was a good friend of mine. I opened the door to no one. I kind of just assumed my friend Ding Dong ditched me on his way home. So, I went back to playing Skyrim. Then, I was shoved hard enough for me to throw my controller into the wall and break it. I hit my head and bled pretty badly. I got up in a panic and looked around for whatever truck hit me, and it was dead silent in my place. I called my mom and aunt, who did some cleansing stuff and advised me on what to do. I did it, even though I don't believe in it, because it's better than nothing. Then my power was cut. I opened the door after checking my breaker box inside my place. Someone outside flipped the main breaker. When I opened the door and turned the main breaker on outside, I felt very uneasy when I made it back into my place. My mom thinks whatever entered needed the door open and knocked and cut my power to trick me into opening the door. A few days later, my wife jokes about jolting awake and seeing a 7-foot black, muscular figure in our room over our youngest child, and decided to go back asleep, assuming sleep paralysis. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. The fact that there is more than likely an entity that clearly pushed you over and made you bleed and break your controller. That's too much. That is a strong entity, in my opinion. And I think this person's mom is correct. I definitely think that they knocked on the door and that was them trying to get in. And when you open the door, that let them in. After all the cleansing stuff happened, it wanted back in. So it cut their power and boom, you got the door back open and they came back in. I'm not sure what to do about that. Maybe cleanse the house again and then put salt around every entrance of the home, especially all the windows. I really don't know if that does much, but that's the knowledge that I have for these types of things. Have any of you guys had an experience like this? Do you have any suggestions for this person? Let me know. It's a pretty brutal one, honestly. But anyhow, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And well, it's an odd world after all.
Oddballs. Go follow us on It's an Odd World After All podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Also, give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. If you have a story you would like to share, email us at it'sanoddworldafterall@gmail.com or message us on one of our social platforms. Don't forget to share us with your family and friends. And check out our website, it'sanoddworldafterall.com.